Hello and welcome to, let's see, what month are we in? April's Stuck on a Bucket. Apologize for the delay in starting the webinar here today. Gotta enjoy the unknown circumstances of traveling from airfare from one state to another. So anyhow, we'll get going here. I am Fritz Wichern, sales engineer for KMC Controls. I'm joined today by Greg Salisbury, who's going to be listening in and keeping me in line, making sure everything that I'm saying makes sense and not a complete mumbo jumbo. At least that's the plan. Today we're going to be taking a look at configuring and troubleshooting the NetSensors. With a little bit of kind of diving into some of the proper installation tips, setting up some of the single set points, and looking at using the STE-9001 distribution module. As always, we'll have question and answers at the end, but if you do have questions as we're going along, feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll answer them as we come to them. And then keep an eye out for an email afterwards for that fancy KMC Yeti cup that folks get after each one. So if you haven't gotten one yet, hopefully you'll get one soon. So we'll start off today. I've got some information in the slideshows, and I think most of y'all are familiar with where to find information on the application guides, but real quick, I just wanted to jump over to a browser, pull up our KMC website here, right? So you can go out to our website, search part number, scroll down, you've got documents, and under here you can find all kinds of application guides, room sensor and thermostat mounting. That's where I pulled some of the information for today. There's a lot of critical points and how those NetSensors are mounted and the conditions and spaces that they're set in. In addition to that, we've also got the application guide for the single set point setup. But in this case, if you haven't seen it, there's a downloads tab. And on that downloads tab, you've got a zip file that'll have, I think it's got a BND file in it, as well as a Word document that kind of will stop or actually I think it's a PDF. It'll step you through setting up single set point. We're going to go through a little bit of that single set point setup as well here in a little bit, but just wanted to point out as a reminder for any of the documentation you're looking for, right? You can always come out to the website, find the part you're looking for, scroll down, and you got documents, data sheets, installation guides, and then any additional documents that may be available. In this case, under that distribution module here, we've got a couple zip files that have some sample AV file or analog variables, BVs, VND, and the control basic logic to do a couple different setups here. One's for a VAV using 3 NetSensors where you're averaging in high-low. And then another one for 8 zones of baseboard heat and a single cool rooftop. So those files are out on the website. You can go out and download those to grab that information. So I'll go ahead and minimize this out of the way here. Moving on, we're going to talk just a little bit about what a NetSensor is. I think pretty much everybody on the call is probably pretty familiar with what the NetSensor is. Right, it's our wall-mounted digital phase sensor. You can do temperature, humidity, motion, or occupancy, CO2 as well. You've got a configurable display. You've got single or multiple set points available. As a service tool, you can do commissioning. You can set up with the softwares, balance points, and you can, I think, control up to 32 additional command points through that display for the user control and monitoring of a connected system. So if you're looking at a lighting, fan, air handler control. So there's quite a bit you can dig deep into those NetSensors and really get the full use out of them. Next, we're going to just take a quick look at it. I know a lot of y'all heard this, so I'm not going to drag on about it, but it is important to remember, the proper installation and how these sensors should be set up. You don't want to have it blocked from normal air circulation or exposed to, heat from a radiant heater, drafts from windows, things like that. You don't want it mounted on an exterior wall. And sometimes some of this stuff you think would be kind of common sense, but a lot of times when we're out in the field and installing products, a lot of that we don't necessarily think. We find a wall that seems like it'd be good, and we go ahead and install it there, and it turns out there's maybe something on the other side of the wall, like a large thermal mass, and so there's a lot of things to think and go into this, and then especially when you get into the motion sensor side of it, you've got figures there. If you do happen to run into troubles with the NetSensors, I thought I wanted to kind of breeze over some of the questions that you're going to get if you call in to tech support, right? They're going to be looking for a lot of information from you to really kind of help us narrow down and troubleshoot what that issue could be and how we can help you there. So I'm not going to read through all these bullet points, but it's good to know model, firmware revision, serial number, the length of the cable, type of cable. Were in there any special customization of the NetSensor? And if that's the case, a backup of the BND file for us to reference and take a look at. How long has that NetSensor been installed before the issue started? If it's a temperature related issue, how far is it off? What were you using as a reference to monitor or make sure that it was actually reading off and not just a fluke? And again, questions we'll ask you: was it installed in sunlight? Was it exposed to a draft through the back of the conduit, or mounting box? So these questions we're going to, ask you if it comes in. If it's a dimming display issue, a couple common things to look at are making sure the cable length isn't longer than 150 feet and you're using a standard, Cat5 cable for it. CO2 related issues, how far off of it was the CO2 reading? Was it used? What was used to calibrate that sensor? And then, of course, did it have time to actually go through and do that internal automatic self-calibration? So in that case, it needs to be powered on for 24 hours and be exposed to fresh air during that period of time. So those are all the questions that you're going to get if we get into it. So we're going to skip on here. A couple error messages you may see in some of the responses of what it may come back as an issue there. So some of you may have seen RP1 drop error on your NetSensor display. And so it's the read property group 1. So it's looking at read messages for CO2 offset, humidity offset. And so you'll see the different options here, but the error could be generated if there's no response, if it's a checksum error. So some of these things here are just a little bit of a guide to help you kind of troubleshoot through seeing some of these errors. With it, read property 2 drop error. The read messages, what it's looking at, a heat icon, cool icon, so all your icons there. And again, it's generated if there's no response within 100 milliseconds, or a response command, not a read response. So some of these things could be related to cable issues, if maybe it's a flaky connection, something like that. Skipping through here, we've got up drop error and low drop error, right? So these are referring to errors on the display message there. And again, all this kind of comes back to these errors are popping up if it's not getting a response within a certain amount of time. And then finally, we got a couple sequence drop errors, and then COM dead, no communication with the panel, which actually I ran into this morning. I set one of these up last week before I went out of town, a distribution board, and had some NetSensor set up, and had plugged it all in, and then went out of town and came back for the training this morning and realized I had COM dead flashing on my sensor ports 2, 3, and 4. I was talking to Greg, and Greg's like, well, hey, did you actually go in and enable those net sensors? And so that's something to pay attention to when you're setting these up. And we'll connect up here in a minute, and I'll show you what I did there and to get that reading going. So moving on, we're going to take a look at our single set point setup. So this is in a case of building owner or operator doesn't want to use the dual set point. So it's a fairly simple setup. We're just going to configure AV5 to being a single set point. Add a little bit of custom logic to it there. If you go out to the website, again, this will be referenced under the NetSensor pages there, but that PDF is listed here. If you want to go rewatch this later on, you can go out and find that. So let's switch over here. I'm going to pull up my connect. Let's see if we've got that. All right. So Greg, can you verify you can see my connect on my screen here?
I can.
Perfect. All right. So I'm working with, for the single set point setup, I've got my back 9001 controller, VAV controller set up. I've got my 9005, and so what I'm doing here is actually you can go step by step through the PDF, and I'll drag it over here so y'all can see this as well. This is what it's going to look like, right? It starts you out single set point, and it'll go through all the steps to go through and do this on your own, but we're going to kind of breeze through a few of them so that you can see it in live process as well. So what we're doing is we're taking AV5 from our analog value objects, and instead of having it be the occupied cool set point, we've come in and changed the object name to set point and description just to set point. So that's going to be our single set point that we're going to use throughout this process of moving over to the single set point. Next, we're going to pull up our data sensor object. And we'll come down in our sensor port here, right? I've already got it pulled up for DSO1. And so in this case, for our different modes, what we need to do is come in and actually delete one of these modes out. And we're going to change display name to set point. And we want to come over and check to see if we've got a maximum set point in here. If you don't want to add one in, or if you just want to leave it at a default value in there. Let's see, what is it, AV10, I believe. Yeah, that'll work. So we'll come in, we did that from the mode for cooling. We'll look at heating, right? So we're going to come in and just delete one of these lines out. That's all we're doing. Is just taking one of these lines out so that we're getting down to a single set point. Well, nope, I deleted a name. Let's delete the whole line there. And under object, I'm coming in and I'm just changing this to set point. And actually, let me double check and see. Did I do that on cool? Nope, I didn't do that on the cool one. Oh, I bet I didn't save it after I did it either. Change that to set point. Do a save. Wait for it to go through there. So we'll go back to our mode here. Change our display name to set point. We've got it set to AV5 for a single set point here. Minimum, we don't have a minimum set up. We can leave that at 10, or you can change it to an object. So you got some flexibility of how you want to set that up. Once you've got those done, the minimums there, you're going to come into Let's see. Close this out. Up to our advanced tab here. We're going to find our occupied cool set point under display set point configuration here. And what we're going to want to do is change that display name again just to set point. And then we can go through and save changes. And I'm breezing through this fairly quick, but the PDF does a good job of really bullet pointing out each individual step that you'll do. Once you've done that, and you've already saved that single set point configuration over into your resource manager here, you can see I've got the PDF listed out. This is where I unzipped that file from our website. Underneath that, we've got a program for single set point. So I'm going to look at my programs and see I don't have anything in program 7, so I can drag that over and drop it in, and we'll run on cold start set. We'll say OK. We'll set that and run. And that is the gist of it. You want to make sure once that's in there and done that your set point is, or your new program is actually running. And you can check under here. You want to make sure that run on cold start is checked and set, that your program state is running. And then once you've done all this, you're going to want to go in and do a reinitialization of that controller. And you should be good to go. We'll go ahead and start that process. And I don't have a camera on the NetSensor over here, but you should be able to see that when you're doing it on your test bench or other work, having that run. And now it's got a single set point that you can control to there. So that's a look at the single set point setup. So I'm going to click back over to the slideshow here. So the next meat of our course here. So we've got the distribution module, right? So this is great for if you've got multi-zones, if a multi-zone air handler or VAV box where you're wanting to look at, 4 different rooms, temperature, anything like that. Again, this can be used with the back 5900 controllers, the VAV controllers, or the unitary or application-specific controllers, the 9300 series. It's all controlled through the Ethernet cable, right? So you've got one connection that goes from the board back to the room sensor port on your controller. And then all your net sensors will connect up on this distribution board. It's good to know that you want those to go in line. So you want to start at port 1, and I don't know if y'all can see this or not, but underneath on the underside of the board here, you got port 1, 2, 3, 4. So it starts on the left and goes to the right there. But it's important to make sure you put those net sensors in order and keep them in line. Because if you have some gaps in there, you could run into some issues. So that's good there. This is powered off a separate 24-volt supply. So it's not powered through the controller or the room sensor cord. So make sure you connect with that. Out on the website, like I said, there's a couple sample files. It's important to know that these are just sample files. They're used to, be kind of a starting off point for you. So we'll look at, let's see, I'm going to show you. So as part of that file, there's a Word document in there that's got the instructions that kind of take you through an introduction of what this sample file is going to do. In this case, they're using it as an example with a 9000 series VAV controller. And it'll give you the objects of average temperature, highest temperature, lowest temperature. And each net sensor then shows the temperature in its own space. And it's got all the steps and any modifications that you need to make here. again, it shows you what to do with the net sensors and the code that you're going to be using. So what I want to jump over to, and I think a big part of this to point out is, let's see if we can pull Connect back up. So when you're setting up multiple sensors, let me pull up my NetSensor objects here. So this is actually my 5901, excuse me, that I have my distribution board connected to. And in this case, it's important to know that each of these data sensors or room sensors that you connect, you need to come in and create individual points for each of these values, depending on what type of sensors you have connected. So if you're going to have multiple net sensors with temperature, humidity, and CO2, you're going to need to create all those AV objects for each of those in the controller. And so that's where some of these sample files can come in handy because they have a lot of that built out already in them. So if I'm over here in my resource manager, and I'm going to expand out the backup, the BND of that, in this case, VAV object with 3 sensors. And if I look in, you'll see I have all my standard points for that first net sensor. In this case, well, this one's a little different. So let's look at the 8 zone one. Don't you love live demos? So here's what I was getting at. In the first one, we've got space temp, space set point offset, all our points that are associated with the net sensor here. And if we scroll down a little bit, built in, you've got number 2 in front of all these additional points, all these same points. So the big thing when you're using multiple net sensors with that distribution board is that you've got to come in and create these points and then come into each of your net sensor configurations and actually reference each of these temperature, humidity, CO2, the motion sensor to those extra points that are found here. So if this is 3, I'd scroll down and look for 3. It looks like I'm in the 7, so I'm just going to click one of those. So you want to scroll down and you want to make sure that these points, these values that are coming off of the net sensor are all going to separate AVs in your system. Then once you've got all that lined out, that's when you can start using then those AVs in your programs to run the averaging and all that information out. So am I explaining that clear enough, Greg? Is that making sense? I think there's talked to a couple people that there was a little confusion that these points don't automatically create themselves.
Yeah, if you have 8, it's going to take a little work setting up individual AVs for everything.
Yep, creating the individual points and everything. So that's where you can kind of come in and use some of the resources, the sample files that we've created out on the website for it, and to build all that out. So what else? That's that. I think that's about the meat of what I wanted to cover. Do we have any questions? Were there any questions that came in?
One of them was asked if it would work with a hot deck, cold deck system, and I said yes.
Gotcha. Yep. So it's all fully customizable. So you can set these, net sensors up where you need them, where you want them. It's going to change, what values you have for it. Will affect what analog variables you create and binary variables if it's got a motion sensor. So there's a little planning that goes into it, but once you set those up and then go through and get them all referenced as necessary, it'll make it a smoother run for you.
We have one more question that asked if we will ever get back to tenths on the degree. So yes, if you actually delete DSO1, recreate it, or if you've got one that you've stored over in your resource manager, you can drag and drop that on a controller, and that should align the NetSensor files and get you tenths of a degree again.
Perfect.
And you want to make sure that you're at the latest firmware for the Conquest controllers if you have the latest NetSensor.
And if you are having any issues as well with setting up multiple NetSensors, it's good to note what firmware those NetSensors are at, and confirming that they're all at the same firmware revision. If for some reason they're one's communicating but another's not, that could be something to look at and pay attention to. So, but that covers the meat of what I was wanting to cover and go through today. Again, I apologize for the late start, everybody, but that about wraps it up. If there's no more questions or answers that we can cover, our next Stuck in a Bucket webinar will be Friday, May 23rd. And I'm not going to plan any travel or air travel for the same day of that webinar. So that didn't work out this morning. So kind of threw the whole day off. So anyway. As always, if you got ideas or something you want covered on a Stuck in a Bucket, comment on one of the videos. All these get posted out to our website, or rather on the YouTube channel. So you could comment on one of those, or shoot me an email, or shoot Greg an email, shoot your AVP an email and say, hey, I'd like y'all to cover this or that, whatever it may be. And we'll be happy to talk a little bit about it. So I appreciate everybody jumping on the call. Greg, thanks for jumping on.
You're welcome.
And I hope everybody has a great day.